To start with, you can skip the intro splash screens by pressing E. Push this 4 times. You'll get to the main menu. Hi there, Freaky here. We're going to cover some of the things the tutorial doesn't tell you about. First up, we're going to go over the controls. If you go to the control scheme, you can see that you've got the keys listed here. If you go to grapple, V is to cancel your tethers. Just demonstrate that here. And V gets rid of the tethers. You should probably all know that you can press space to go up, shift to go down. You can also press C to go down as well. If you hold down F, you can do your little boop, which pushes objects away. However, if you middle mouse click, it does the same thing. You probably already know that pressing the number keys changes your tools. 1 for the grapple, 2 for the stinger or the split saw. But if you press the 0 key, you put your tools away. And that allows you to press F to pick up objects without setting off your booper. I'm pressing F now and nothing's happening. But with the grapple out, it starts to boop things away from you. When you're grappling an object, you can right click to bring it towards you. Careful not to hold it down too much or you'll break your suit when it hits you. When you grapple with an object that's heavier than you are, you'll instead pull yourself towards it. For example, if I want to return to the Master Jack, I can start pulling myself in. It's a much faster way to return than simply using the jetpack to thrust over there. In this section we're going to be covering movement. When you move forward, you will slow down a little bit to around 1 meter a second, but then you will stop slowing down. So at these very slow speeds you'll just keep drifting. As you can see there, we just went up above 2 meters a second and now we're back down to 1. And we're just going to keep drifting like this. Now this isn't true for every other object in the game. If I bring this object here and just leave it drifting slightly, you'll see that it will begin to slow down and eventually it will stop. The smaller objects will slow down less quickly than other objects. There's less drag on them. You see it's slowing down a bit now. And eventually we'll see that it will come to a complete halt. Larger objects have more of a drag on them. For example, this ship with 1 tether will not move. Even though it's in space, the drag holds it in place, it makes it sticky. Which means that we need quite a few tethers before it'll actually start to move. Which means that moving large objects with tethers is actually quite inefficient if 1 tether won't move it. A few more. And now you can see that the ship is still not moving with all these tethers on it. And now we can see that the ship is just starting to move. You can see if you look at the objects in the bay there that the ship is slowly moving. Very, very slowly. And if I release these tethers, you see it's stopped immediately. So the ship is very sticky because it's got such a large mass. Your character can fit through very small gaps. This is a pretty small gap here, but I can fit through it. I can even go underneath this cut point if I rotate myself a little bit. See, that's a very small space that I can squeeze through. It really helps to get past these cut points, as well as get over the airlock. When you grapple objects, you might notice that there's a blue outline. This means that you can move it around with your grapple. There's a mass limit on your grapple. So for example, this thing has too much mass for me to move. So I can move around and it's not going to do anything. You can overcome this limit by taking something that's lighter that you can move and simply pushing it into the larger object. You see that we've now started to move this large object by pushing it with this. This allows you to not waste your tethers on pushing things into places where you need them. If you grapple something that's over your mass limit and you try and push it away, you'll instead push yourself away. You can use this to move very quickly. You can do it multiple times, up to a limit of 20 meters a second, at which point you won't speed up anymore. You can use the berth walls to push off of. You see we're going quite fast. Now you can also use this to slow yourself down. I don't recommend doing this, however, unless it's an emergency and you're about to go into the processor or the furnace. The best way to slow down is to simply hold down your brake, which is set to control by default. The brake is faster than using your thrusters to fight against your momentum. For example, if I speed up and try and slow myself down with my thrusters, you can see my speed is not going down very fast. Whereas if I hold control, I stop very quickly. So always use control if you're trying to slow down. You can press Z and X to grab onto things. By alternating from Z and X, you can climb over surfaces and move without using your thrusters. You may have noticed that when you try and move an object with too much force, you get a red beam, and if you keep holding it, it'll break. You can keep doing this, however, to move an object that's quite heavy very fast. So if we keep moving it, you'll see that we move a very heavy object with quite a lot of speed, which is pretty comparable to a tether. When you grapple an object, if you do a quick 180 and hold down the beam, you'll bring the object towards you. It's an easy way of getting a high mass object to go towards you instead of pulling yourself towards it. There are only 3 things that can break a tether. The first is the tether release key V, which breaks all of your tethers. The second is placing an object in the path of the tether. If it stays there for a while, it will turn red and disappear. And thirdly, if you wait, the tethers have a lifetime, and once that lifetime is up, they will break themselves. When you grapple an object and push it towards something else, the force is applied from the grapple point towards the point you're facing. So when I grapple this, you see that it's moved down towards the point that I'm facing, rather than away from me where the point actually is. Next we're going to cover cutting. When you cut thin slices off an aluminium panel, you'll find that it will just detach from the structure. This is very helpful when you want to cut your way inside somewhere and make a large hole. The cockpit door panel can be removed. If you simply remove these 4 large beams, also remember to remove the storage bins that are also holding it in place. And the frame will simply pop out. Which makes it much easier to remove all the bits that are inside, because they won't catch on the door frame anymore. When you see this dotted line on the split saw, this means that it will cut through anything that's in the way, all the way up to the layer that it's seeing. So for example, if I use the split saw here, you see the dotted line will cut across that soft crate. And we've just destroyed it. So be careful that there's nothing flammable that's in the way, as it will explode. You need to be careful when you're making cuts on your right hand side. Now this cut looks safe, and if we do it, it is indeed safe. However, the beam originates from the gun to your right, which means that if we make this cut, the beam will intersect that fuel tank, even though our HUD makes it seem like it won't. So be careful when you're making cuts like that. You can break jacks using coolant tanks. Once you've frozen it, simply slam an object into it. See little bits of it will start to break off. Unfortunately, you can't process the jacks for money, but it is pretty neat that you can break them.